It's been a big story throughout the weekend, the release of supposed leaked emails from the president in a conversation with the donors of his presidential campaign in the ANC. And a while ago, we spoke to the presidential spokesperson, Ms. Kusala Tiko, about their responses to this.
There is absolutely no basis for such an assertion that the president deliberately or otherwise misled the nation. You'll remember, Desiree, that when this whole matter started, the president was asked about a donation to Gavin Watson of 500,000 rand. The president answered in the manner that he did in Parliament and then subsequently went back to correct it. Now, this was because indeed he did not know about the donation that Mr. Watson made. And this was the approach that the campaign had taken to ensure that to the greatest extent possible, President Ramaphosa did not have the information of the donors that donated to his campaign.
Which is the main contention, that he said he did not have information about the donors, but seemingly from these emails, he did. Have you been able to check the authenticity of these emails? Is the information contained in there correct?
Well, we don't want to pronounce on the authenticity of these emails. Firstly, because we don't know how they were obtained. We don't know from where and for what purpose they're being distributed. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, they could have been obtained illegally. We are aware of certain instances where some of the recipients of the email would say that the emails were doctored. But that being the case, we don't want to comment on the authenticity of it. But there's the substance of the issues that are raised there. Now, there's one email, for example, where it said the president was instructing a certain Donald to pay an amount into into the fundraising account. Now, that is true, and it supports what we said to the public protector, that the president had donated some of his personal money into the campaign. We've also said to the public protector that the president did attend fundraising dinners, and there were times where his guidance was sought on whether to approach a certain donor or not. But at the end of the day, the entire campaign was run in such a way that he was not involved in the day-to-day funding, the soliciting of that funding. And we want to make this point and reassert it, that we stand by what we have said. Up until this point, the president does not have a record of everybody who donated to the campaign or the amounts they would have donated.
Where do you think the disconnect is between public perception and what the president is saying? Because there's a growing a sense that the president is a dishonest participant.
You know, and I think we must appreciate what you call disconnect. Desiree, let's start from the beginning and say that funding of campaigns is not illegal. There's also no regulation that compels anybody, whether it's the president or any other politician, to disclose that funding that goes into campaigns that they run. Now, where I think the dissonance arises is where the public feel justified to get that information and know who is funding those campaigns. And we must appreciate that we've come from a very difficult history where we are very cynical and very skeptical about what would perhaps happen. But at the current moment, when that campaign was undertaken, there was no compulsion for disclosure. And the president, therefore, did not disclose, and he was not even given the information for him to disclose. We appreciate that perhaps the time has come to reopen that discussion and say that all of these campaigns, that would have been undertaken, whether it's within the African National Congress or any other political party, do we want South Africans to have access to that information, and how do we go about it? But we want to reiterate the point that there is no wrongdoing on the part of the president currently. It's unfortunate that a narrative is being created around this. For example, I mean, we've heard rumors being thrown around that he's involved in money laundering. There's absolutely no basis for that. Neither the report of the public protector would even seek to support that. Money laundering, Desiree, is when you know that somebody is involved in criminal activity, you take money from them with the intention to continue to hide the origins of that money. I don't think that anybody is saying that President Ramaphosa has done that. The fact that there were several accounts that were used in the course of the campaign does not point to money laundering at all.
What's the current relationship between the president, the working relationship between the president and the public protector? She was at an event over the weekend saying that the president is a constitutional being and he needs to behave accordingly, but also saying that her reports need to be afforded the same status as those of a judge.
The President holds the office of the Public Protector in the highest regard. He has taken an oath that he will protect, defend and uphold the Constitution, and that obviously means ensuring that he is right at the forefront of showing respect to that office, and obviously where he disagrees with a finding, as in the case of the investigation she would have done on him, he's well within his rights to take those up with the courts. Now, the Public Protector is subject to the courts. She's not equal to the courts. We've also picked up some reports where, for example, the Public Protector says she's not supposed to be paying when any of her reports are taken successfully on review. Now that's very unfortunate, because she makes an example of judges and says that judges are not compelled to pay. But judges don't use taxpayers' monies to defend their reports when they're taken on appeal. The Public Protector does, and obviously she must then account to the public and to the taxpayer, and obviously to the courts as is required by law. But the last point that I want to make is that it's not true that judges are not subject to any censure. She herself, the Public Protector, had threatened to take a judge recently to the Judicial Services Commission on a matter that she was unhappy about. So our view is that there is a legal framework in this country that all of us are subjected to, whether it is the President, whether it is the Public Protector, and it is incumbent upon us that we continue to work within that particular framework as a platform for coexistence.